Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. That one boy's sure been making a comeback in pop culture, hasn't he? In 2022, the Carlo Collodi story found itself with not one, not two, but three new film adaptations, each completely different than the next. There was the live-action remake of the 1940 Disney classic.
Hello, Pops.
And calling it subpar to the original is a very nice way of putting it. There was the Russian animated feature that Lionsgate imported with new voices like Pauly Shore and Jon Heder that became a viral sensation with the famous
"Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see."
You know, looking back, it's so weird how that movie was once a massive trend. Seriously, how did it get so popular in the first? Oh, wait a minute. And finally, we have the main subject of today, Guillermo del Toro's stop-motion passion project. Much like Pinocchio himself, it was a movie that went through a big journey in order to become real. So big, in fact, that the film tried to get off the ground since it was first announced in 2008. For years, many people thought that this would end up as one of Guillermo's cool ideas that would ultimately never happen. But the filmmaker never gave up on his love letter to both the original tale and the medium of animation. It wasn't until in 2018 when Netflix stepped in like the Blue Fairy and granted Del Toro's wish. Which brings us to now with his latest feature, and the first time that the man himself is bringing his renowned craftsmanship into an animated film. So now that we'll be exploring a new version of Carlo Collodi's story, again, will all those years of bringing this adaptation to life be worth it? Or like Pinocchio himself, is this actually more of a problematic troublemaker? Let's find out. The story.
It's a story you may think you know, but you don't.
Yeah, he's got a point. This may be first recognizable as the story of Carlo Collodi's Pinocchio, but there are some significant differences that make this version easily distinguishable compared to all other adaptations before it. In this version, the setting takes place during the 1930s in Italy, back when the country was completely enveloped by far-right fascism and ruled under the dictatorship of Mussolini. An admirable trait that I could say right now of the feature is that this does not shy away from the harshness of its own environment. Through the lens of the innocent-minded Pinocchio, it puts controversial topics into question regarding if their roles in our lives are even necessary in the first place, like politics, especially nationalism, and religion. And just like when you question these types of ideologies, they don't hesitate to push back and show its ugly side for the sake of keeping control in their own hands.
You may have no strength, but I control you.
Yet when they do get ugly, the film does not hesitate to throw that hate back at them, resulting in moments to go savage, and when certain characters are out, it makes sure that they don't come back for good. Seriously, brace yourself for some of the most brutal deaths in an animated film. They can even make Disney wince in pain. Also, the movie has another twist to the tale where it explains the magic that brings Pinocchio to life. Not only diving deeper into the lore of the fairy who did the deed, or the wood sprite as she's called here, but also how it makes Pinocchio immortal, which weighs in on both the good and the bad to present a more philosophical side regarding why our limited time on Earth is what makes life so precious.
While you may have eternal life, your loved ones, they do not. You never know how long you have with someone until they're gone.
However, even with all of its social commentary, there is no denying that this does stay true to the spirit of Pinocchio, and the story's secret is the theme of obedience. It doesn't portray the subject as black and white and just say that you should obey your parents or don't tell a lie. While it does present the downsides of disobedience and how it can cause more problems, especially to others like how Geppetto often gets the consequences of Pinocchio's actions,
People are sometimes afraid of things they don't know.
I don't understand.
it also argues how they can be helpful when the person's heart is in the right place. I'll go into this later, but Pinocchio's actions are motivated by the love of his father, and he'll do anything to have his approval. In a way, it shows you the good side of disobedience and how it can be used for acts of selflessness, unity, and fighting against fascism and other far-right ideologies. It's a Pinocchio story that offers something both familiar and fresh, delivering audiences what we know and love from the classic tale, and an additional topical edge where it's not afraid to discuss about some controversial subjects that other mainstream animated films would rather avoid, making it unpredictable to be more engaging to get into its unique experience and to be more emotionally involved. In fact, I'll admit that I got so invested in the movie that I actually teared up in the end. And it's honestly been years since a movie was able to do that to me. So that's personally really something that it could do that. You think you know the story of Pinocchio, but like Sebastian said, you don't, because it's way better than you think. The animation. Way back when we first heard about this movie, Guillermo del Toro stated that the designs were going to be inspired by the 2002 illustrations by Chris Grimley. In fact, Grimley was supposed to be heavily involved in the picture as a director alongside veteran stop-motion animator Mark Gustafsson. While times have changed and Griss's co-directing position was replaced by del Toro himself, but he still got a producing credit in the final film, his influence still shines through and helps add a little extra touch to this already beautiful-looking animation. The most that was taken from the illustrations is the design of Pinocchio himself, who is debatably the most puppet-looking depiction of the character with how he shows off that he's 100% wood. Most of the movie does not share his abstract style, with a few exceptions like what you could find in the show, but funny enough, it actually works better this way since he's unlike everything around him, which is a bit more down to earth. The overall designs are meant to be more serious, almost like a painting from that era coming to life, even with the colors being more muted to emphasize the gloom of war and fascism. Yet Pinocchio sticks out like a sore thumb with how he's completely unnatural as a living wooden puppet with the mind of a child.
He's just a puppet.
No, I'm not. I'm a real boy.
It's a contrast that works perfectly well with the story of Pinocchio, as it emphasizes his naivete with how he's so out of place with the environment he's in, yet never once does he notice. On a side note, they also do very well to play around with the different sizes, especially with Sebastian J. Cricket whenever he hangs around with Pinocchio. In fact, they have to go and create all different sizes of puppets of both Pinocchio and Sebastian in order to go and sell the illusion.
We need the cricket and the shoulder of Pinocchio, talking to him, whispering in his ear, laying close to him, so we use this big Pinocchio.
Speaking of the puppet, the animator's craftsmanship in this movie is the one thing that can outshine the work of Geppetto himself. The backgrounds do very well to take you back to Italy at the brink of World War II, with areas that bring out that sense of being seemingly welcoming, but there's something completely off that gives out an unsafe feeling where even Pinocchio shouldn't be there for long, like Podesta's soldier camp and Count Volpe's show.
Pinocchio is a tale that has lived through the centuries, a fable very close to my heart.
As for animating the character, the team does the most to let their personality shine through, no matter who they are. But of course, it's the non-humans that are the most amazing to see come to life, like Volpe's monkey assistant Spazzatura, the wood sprites, Sebastian J. Cricket, and Pinocchio himself, whom his movements are also unapologetically like a puppet. But there is one element that does stand out from the rest of the feature, even more than Pinocchio, and that's the wood sprites and the world of the afterlife. This, more than anything, visually tells you that this is a Guillermo del Toro movie. From the surrealistic macabre tone with its spooky blue palette, to the eyes on the horns and the wings of the sprites. And to elevate their supernatural presence, they really play up the effects, which are already solid in the film with its use of fire, water, and explosions, even if it's noticeable that there may be some CG assistance used, but the sprites go to a whole other level with what they do with light and sand in order to present their magic.
guide him to be good.
Also, it's worth noting to stick around during the credits because this is a very rare instance that the animators actually get credited before the big-name actors do. May not sound like much, but as an animation fan myself, it's really cool to see this kind of representation for animators where they get this level of respect. Like an actual living puppet who comes alive with no strings, the animation in this movie is a true sight to behold. The characters. Other than the narrative elements that I've mentioned before, the biggest difference between this and the original book is the characters. Yes, there are some familiar names featured like Pinocchio, Geppetto, and the Cricket, but everyone else is either an entirely new character or a completely altered version of a Collodi character. However, they were changed for a good reason, and the way that they are played up makes them equally as memorable as the Disney versions. One significant reason is because the casting in this film is perfect. It's almost like they were created for those actors specifically to play the part, and their voices work exceptionally well to bring these characters to life alongside the animators. From Gregory Mann's childlike wonder, to David Bradley's despair, to Ewan McGregor's passionate energy, to Tilda Swinton's mysterious presence, to Ron Perlman's threatening authority, to Cate Blanchett's surprising monkey performance, to Christoph Waltz's manipulative charisma.
Ah, we have found him, our star. Everyone shall love you and call your name Pinocchio. Pinocchio!
As we introduce and reintroduce ourselves to the cast, this Pinocchio sticks a little truer to the book's version, where he's a bit more chaotic and pretty hard to control once he comes to life. However, unlike the original, whose misbehavior was more intentional, this one gets into trouble because he doesn't really know any better. He's like a hyperactive kid who's filled with wonder, and the one thing he cares the most is his father. Maybe not the smartest pine in the forest, but he wants to make sure that whatever he does, it would make him proud. Especially when his purpose in life, given to him by the sprite, is for Geppetto to be happy. Speaking of which, Geppetto is a more tragic figure in this picture. Once a beloved woodcarver of his community, he's portrayed as the tragic figure whose life came crashing down after he lost his son Carlo to a bomb. While he could never let go of his grief, he fell into a be careful what you wish for situation when the puppet he built when he was drunk came to life, and now has to become a father again while trying to keep the boy under control. Then there's Sebastian J. Cricket, who is the comic relief of the film as the aspiring writer who has seen the world and now has to make sure that Pinocchio is good. For a movie that can get dark quite often, his comedic antics and slapstick-style humor is much needed to lighten up the mood and balance the feature's tone so that this can be still fun to watch. There are also the wood sprites, the fairies of this version, where one is more kind-hearted to help ease Geppetto's sorrow, and the other is in charge of managing life and death on Earth. While mysterious and have this godlike presence to them, they're responsible to explain further about the magic that brought Pinocchio to life, and how his gift can be both a blessing and a curse. As for the new characters, there's Kel Volpe, who is like the combination of the Fox and the Cat and Mangiafuoco in the book, or Honest John and Gideon and Stromboli for you Disney fans. He's the greedy head of the show who's using Pinocchio for profit, and is often shown to be abusive with his assistant Spazzatura, whom he can be jealous of how the puppet often steals his thunder. If you're a fan of Inglourious Basterds, you're going to love Volpe because he's very much the cartoon version of Hans Landa. And there's also Podesta, the government official who makes sure that the town follows the fascist order of Mussolini. As a nationalist, he puts the image of his country above everything else, even his own son Candlewick, and will do anything to make sure that everything that is a threat to his ideology gets taken down. We've seen many different takes of these characters before, but these ones carry so much depth and so much emotion, along with a wonderful voice cast, that they immediately place themselves as some of the best versions. The songs. Similarly to Sebastian, the songs are meant to be some of the more uplifting moments of the picture to balance its heavy tone. While maybe debatable if this can be considered a musical like the Disney version, and don't worry, I'll get to that later, there are still some scenes that do make the movie more fun and help get the viewer be more familiar with some of these characters. There's Geppetto's number, My Son, which clarifies the loving relationship he has with his boy Carlo at the beginning of the film.
My son, you are my golden sun.
There's Everything Is New to Me, where Pinocchio gets excited to look around and discover everything that's in Geppetto's home, and then breaking it afterwards.
The world is rich with funny words. They ring like bells, those tiny words.
There's We Were Kings Once, that highlights Count Volpe's past as a successful aristocrat.
You were the king's once. Mon Dieu, was it nice?
There's Sebastian's number, Better Tomorrows, that the movie humorously keeps interrupting until he fully performs it in the credits as this Annie-style Broadway number about looking forward to the future positively.
Anything high you dare to follow, open your arms to better tomorrows.
And the rest are the songs that Pinocchio sing during Volpe's shows, like My Bubblegum, Fatherland March, Ciao Papa, and Big Baby 2 Deuce March.
My gum, I put my bubble gum. Like an eagle soaring, magnificent and free, I'll be marching on the path to victory. Now, Papa, me your Papa, time has come to say farewell. Like a bag of poop, magnificent and free, you are farting in the men's lavatory.
I'll say now that the songs are great. Like I said, they enhance both the picture and the characters who sing them, and they provide some enjoyable moments after going through an emotionally tough time. However, my one criticism with this picture is that as a musical, it doesn't feel like the songs were a top priority. I understand that it cares more about telling this new version of the story, and it does so masterfully well. But with how the numbers are treated as an afterthought, I've honestly debated with myself if this should be considered a musical or not, especially when some songs can be just part of the background as others are talking, and all the singing stops when Pinocchio gets himself out of the show a little over halfway through. But again, these songs are solid on their own, and they do contribute to the picture well. I'm just saying that they're not the most memorable parts of the film. After all these years of trying to bring to life his film adaptation of Pinocchio, he finally made his dream come true and resulted in one of his best films yet. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is the greatest adaptation of the Carlo Collodi story since the Walt Disney version. Every element of this picture was carefully crafted to create an unforgettable experience that will make you think, laugh, love, and feel. The story delivers a fresh, thought-provoking take while also staying true to the spirit of the original. The stop-motion animation is stunning, the cast was expertly chosen, the characters are both charming and give us a new perspective to the familiar names, and the songs add some extra fun to the viewing. I don't just highly recommend that you go see it. I consider this to be a must-watch. Like I said, this had me in tears by the end of it, and a movie that can do that to me is one that has my respect and my support. And that's why I implore you that you go watch this. Trust me when I say that you will not be disappointed. Not only is this one of the best animated films released by Netflix, but this is also one of the best movies you could find on the streaming platform. And that's why I give this the Animat seal of approval. I wish you the best of luck on your next movie, Mr. Del Toro, because I think it's going to be hard to top this one.
day, what a day.